Yuujirou, the strongest creature on Earth, grows bored of defeating everyone he faces. He decides to have a son who can give him a challenge. He meets Emi Akezawa, a woman with a dark heart and a love of blood. Yuujirou kills her husband, and she agrees to be the mother of his child. Baki has to learn to fend for himself from an early age. He is put through tough training by his father and does not have the opportunity to play like other kids. Baki is taken to the mountains to train with Ando Reichi, an old friend of Yuujirou's. Ando takes care of Baki and becomes his mentor. When Baki does not progress, Yuujirou stops training him and leaves Emi in charge. Emi uses her fortune to give Baki the best training possible, hiring the best instructors and sending him to the best gyms. Even at a young age, Baki manages to defeat a crowd of men. However, he is later beaten by another group of men with weapons. This only fuels his desire to become stronger. His mission in life is to become strong enough to defeat his father. Baki's mother's training is not enough, so he decides to quit. He meets a world boxing champion and challenges him to a fight, but is easily defeated. This only makes him want to become stronger, so he decides to go to the mountains to train. There, he meets Ando again. Ando tells him about a creature called Yasha that lives in the mountains and that even he has not been able to defeat. Baki decides to fight Yasha but is quickly outmatched. Ando rescues him, but Yasha leaves him badly wounded. Without Ando's company, Baki is left alone. However, he continues to train and learns to release and control the endorphins in his brain, thus increasing his reflexes and speed. He finally meets Yasha again and defeats him. Baki returns home, feeling that he has become stronger. He plans to fight Yuri, the boxer who defeated him earlier. However, a guy named Hanayama injures Yuri, leaving him unable to fight. Hanayama is a mafia boss and one of the strongest men in Japan. Emi sought him out to be Baki's rival. At this point in the series, Hanayama is only 15 years old but already looks like a man in his 40s. Baki is excited to fight Hanayama and goes to his hideout. He easily takes Hanayama down and challenges him to a rematch. Hanayama is furious and accepts the challenge. The rematch is very close, with both fighters having chances to win. However, Baki ultimately emerges victorious. The two boys show mutual respect for each other and become friends. Suddenly, Baki's father appears. Yuujirou hits Hanayama to show Baki that his training will not be enough to defeat him. He then hits Baki, knocking them both unconscious. Yuujirou is angry that Baki is still so weak, so he kills Yasha to motivate him. Baki is angry with his father, Yuujirou, and has decided to challenge him to a fight in a month. He goes to talk to General Stridham, an old friend of his father's, who tells him about a group of mercenaries hiding in a remote location. Baki goes there to test his strength and defeats most of the soldiers, but one in particular, Gaia, gives him a hard time. Gaia has a split personality, and one side of him is a nice guy named Nomura, while the other side is a dangerous super soldier. After a long fight, Baki manages to defeat Gaia and win his friendship. Baki returns home to talk to his mother, but she hits him in the face and tells him that he is still weak, and that because of him, Yuujirou doesn't love her anymore. Baki leaves the hotel very sad, but outside he meets Hanayama, who takes him to his house where they talk like good friends. Finally, the day of his fight against Yuujirou arrives and many people come to watch it. Baki attacks Yuujirou in every possible way but doesn't even tickle him. Despite this, Yuujirou is not disappointed. He tells Emi that this time she has done a good job educating Baki. As was obvious, Yuujirou defeats Baki, but that was not enough for him, so he starts beating him even though Baki was unconscious. Emi finally comes to her senses and realizes what was going on. She tries to help Baki, but Yuujirou shows no mercy to anyone and ends her life. Before dying, Emi asks Baki for forgiveness. This, far from making Baki fall into depression, only makes him want to be stronger to take revenge on his father. During this period of time, he trains in various places where he learns new techniques and gains experience. Baki returns home after learning about an underground fighting tournament, so he tries to enter the tournament to test his strength. The owner of the underground arena is Mitsunari Tokugawa, who at first is not convinced to accept Baki in his tournament, but after seeing the boy's strength, he ends up accepting him. Baki now lives with his girlfriend, Kozue Matsumoto, who supports him in everything and is deeply in love with him. Before the tournament begins, Baki meets Doppo Orochi, the world's strongest karate master with whom he strikes up a good friendship. The underground arena tournament begins, and Baki's first opponent is Kosho, a fighter characterized by his peculiar fighting style that consists of cutting the nerves of his opponents. It is a difficult fight, but in the end, Baki wins and as usual ends up befriending his opponent. During the course of the tournament, Baki will meet different characters. One of them is Motobi, with whom Baki fights but fails to defeat him. Baki's next opponent is a wrestler named Toba. This huge guy starts off dominating the fight, but after a while, Baki starts hitting him in the knees and knocks him down, managing to defeat him. In the middle of the tournament, the fight between Doppo and Yuujirou takes place. The fight was very close, but when Yuujirou realizes that his son is watching him, he gets serious and activates the ultimate power of the Hanma family, the Demon Back. This is a power that increases Yuujirou's strength. Yuujirou defeats Doppo by punching him in the chest and causing his heart to stop beating. But luckily for Doppo, a doctor and fighter named Kureha Shinogi saves his life. The thing is, this doctor was not as good a person as we thought. In fact, he was so evil that he even left a young girl in a wheelchair after using her for one of his experiments. The most interesting thing is that this man was going to be Baki's next opponent. The fight begins, and Baki attacks Kureha with a lot of rage until he knocks him to the ground. It looked like it was going to be an easy victory, but Kureha returns to the fight and, making use of his knowledge of anatomy, manages to wound Baki in his vital points. Despite this, Baki overpowers the doctor and defeats him with a powerful blow to the stomach. That last blow leaves Shinogi so bad that he needs a blood transfusion to save his life. To his surprise, the girl he had left in a wheelchair offers to donate her blood to him. Thus, Kureha softens up a bit and promises to be a better person. Finally, Baki wins the tournament, and with that he earns the admiration of the other fighters. But nothing will be enough for him until he defeats his father. And as usual, Baki returns to his training. Time passes and Tokugawa announces a new tournament in which the winner will win a belt used in the ancient Roman Olympics. In this new tournament, we will meet new characters that will be very important in the series. After losing his right eye in his fight against Yuujirou, Doppo has continued training and now wears an eye patch and will also participate in the tournament. This new tournament will be divided into blocks, and the winners of each block will face each other until only two remain. The two finalists will be the ones who will fight for the belt and the right to be called champion. Baki's first opponent is a bigger fighter than him, but he still manages to defeat him easily and qualifies for the next round. In this tournament, Baki meets Retsu, a character that will be relevant later on. Retsu easily wins his first match after breaking his opponent's neck. The fighting continues and suddenly a wild creature infiltrates the tournament. To Baki's surprise, this creature was none other than Yasha's son, who was seeking revenge for what happened to his father. Yasha Jr. gets out of control and Doppo's son, Katsumi Orochi, stands in his way and is determined to kill him. However, Baki appears and saves Yasha Jr.'s life. The next round begins and it's the turn of Katsumi, who uses a technique that allows him to run 100 meters in a couple of seconds, and with this he defeats his opponent to qualify for the next round. But the most interesting is when we meet Jack Hammer, who is actually Yuujirou's son and Baki's brother. The point is that Jack kept his identity secret, and that is why he used the name Jack Hammer. Another important detail to note is that Jack used steroids to increase his strength, and since it was not illegal to use them, he managed to enter the tournament. After Jack won his match, Yuujirou entered the arena to challenge him to a match because he seemed to be a very interesting guy. Baki gets jealous and tries to stop Jack from fighting his father, but to his bad luck, Yuujirou sends him flying with a punch and tells him to stay out of it. Jack approaches Yuujirou and tells him in his ear the whole truth. This makes Yuujirou very happy, and now he just wants to see Jack fight against Baki, so it will be decided who of the two is more worthy to be his opponent. Again, it is Baki's turn, and now his opponent is Zulu, a Brazilian fighter who gives Baki a tough fight, but as expected, Yuujirou's son wins and qualifies to the next round. Then we have the fight between Retsu and Toba. Despite the large size difference, Retsu wins the match. We also see one of the best fights in the series, which is Katsumi versus Hanayama. Although Hanayama dominated the fight, Katsumi managed to defeat him to qualify for the next round. Well, actually, we all know that Hanayama intentionally let Katsumi win. The fights continue with Shiba versus McGregor and Doppo versus Amanai, who is Yuujirou's disciple. Doppo and Shiba win their fights, but Shiba was so badly injured that he couldn't continue in the tournament. Shibukawa faced Kosho, and thanks to his combat experience, Shibukawa emerged victorious. Baki has to fight Igari Kanji, a man who was already in his last years as a professional wrestler, and so he asks Baki to let him win. Baki doesn't accept, so Igari has to use many tricks to try to defeat Baki. But despite Igari's dirty tactics, Baki wins. Later, the fight between Retsu and Katsumi took place, a fight that did not last long as Retsu easily defeated Katsumi, who had not yet recovered from his fight with Hanayama. In the next fight, Jack defeats the powerful Alexander Gallon. In this fight, Jack shows his fighting style, which is based on biting. This is not prohibited, so Jack takes advantage and wins the fight. Later, Shibukawa defeats Doppo in a good fight. Either of them could have won, but in the end, Shibukawa takes the victory. The semifinals are Jack versus Shibukawa and Baki versus Retsu. As expected, both brothers win their respective fights and will now face each other in the grand final. Before the fight, Baki eats and rests to regain his strength. His friends warn him that Jack is a dirty fighter and uses steroids, but this doesn't bother Baki, and he says he will win no matter what. The grand finale has arrived and both brothers show each other respect before the fight. Jack dominates most of the fight. However, Baki was waiting for the right moment, and using everything he had learned throughout the tournament, manages to hit Jack and leave him in bad shape. It seemed that everything was already decided. However, far from weakening Jack, this puts him in a state of adrenaline and begins to hit Baki without giving him a chance to breathe. The problem is that the effect lasted only a few seconds, and as a consequence, Jack vomits all the chemicals he had ingested before the fight. This makes him lose his muscles and apparently weakens him. But even though his body was in bad condition, Jack did not give up and continued attacking Baki. What Jack didn't expect was that Baki was going to activate the demon back. With this power, Baki becomes stronger and subdues Jack with a chokehold that leaves him unconscious. And that's how Baki defeated his brother Jack and becomes the champion of the underground arena. All the fighters congratulate him, and it is his brother Jack who gives him the championship belt. After this, Baki goes back to school as his girlfriend had convinced him. A couple of weeks pass and Baki has returned to school. However, he still hasn't retired from underground fighting. One day while at school, Baki falls asleep, but for some strange reason his classmates start to tremble. I guess this is because of his intimidating presence. That same day, Mitsunari comes to his school to pay him a visit. What the old man wanted was to talk to Baki, so they meet, and he tells Baki the reason for his visit. He warns Baki of 5 dangerous criminals who have escaped from prison. These men were criminals sentenced to death, but for some strange reason, all 5 escaped from prison at the same time. It's as if they had already planned it a long time ago. According to Mitsunari, these criminals came to Japan looking for a fight. The first of them is Dorian, a criminal who was about to be executed. However, he manages to survive and escapes easily after beating the entire security team that was guarding him. The next of them is Hector Doyle, a guy who had been sentenced to the electric chair. However, this does not even tickle him, and like Dorian, he also manages to escape easily. We also meet Sikorsky, a man who escapes from a maximum security prison in Russia, and he did it using only the strength of his fingers because the prison was several meters underground. When Sikorsky got out of prison, the first thing he did was to go to Alexander Gallon's house to beat him up. He did it because Gallon was very respected and famous in Russia. And let's also remember that Gallon was not yet fully recovered after his fight with Jack Hanma, so he was an easy prey for Sikorsky. In another underwater prison was Speck, a dangerous criminal who also escaped easily. He tells us that he is able to swim underwater for 5 minutes. Finally, we have Ryuko Yanagi, a criminal known for having a poisonous hand with which he can kill dozens of men. He escaped after killing the entire security team guarding him. So the 5 convicts head for the city of Tokyo. The greatest desire of these men is to find an adversary who will give them a taste of defeat. And that's how this new arc begins. The 5 criminals arrive in Tokyo looking for a fight. The first to appear is Speck. The criminal arrives at Baki's school, and in front of his classmates, he beats him up and leaves him unconscious. Baki compared Speck's presence to that of the ogre. No doubt this guy was someone to fear. We also meet Dorian, a guy who fights using all kinds of weapons. He arrives looking for Doppo, but first he will have to face Retsu and Katsumi. Dorian easily defeats Katsumi, and then has a brief fight with Retsu, although he finally decides to leave the place since his target was Doppo. Later, the 5 inmates go to the underground arena to visit Mitsunari. The old man asks them why they had come to Tokyo. They all agree that they just want to fight someone strong. Mitsunari tells them that he can make that wish come true. At that moment, Baki and the others arrive to confront the inmates. Mitsunari organizes a tournament of 10 participants, and the rules are simple. Anyone can challenge them to a match regardless of the day or time. The fights can start at any time. The first fight is Dorian versus Doppo. They left the arena together, and after a quiet conversation, the fight started in the middle of the street. Dorian had come to Japan looking for Doppo, so his dream fight came true. But in the middle of the fight, Retsu appeared to take revenge for what happened in the dojo. However, Doppo tells him that he has everything under control. This fight didn't last long, but the most shocking thing was when Dorian cut Doppo's hand with a special wire. According to Dorian, this type of material was used by astronauts in their space missions, so it could also be used as a weapon. That's why he easily cut Doppo's hand. But despite receiving such severe damage, Doppo attacked Dorian with his injured arm, although he actually did it to buy time and escape from the place. The truth is that if he had stayed fighting, he would have lost due to the loss of blood. In another part of the city, Igari Kanji kidnapped Sikorsky and took him to his gym to get revenge for what he had done to him. I didn't mention it, but at the beginning of this arc, Sikorsky brutally attacked Igari Kanji, and that's why Igari has to wear a bandage on his head. Anyway, Sikorsky beats the crap out of Igari and his henchmen. The Russian is determined to fight the strongest man in the world. Baki was taking a walk with his girlfriend, but suddenly Spec appears in front of them. Luckily, Hanayama shows up to save his friend and takes Spec to a nearby park. And well, this is where one of the best fights of the series takes place. Spec and Hanayama had a very brutal fight that is considered one of the best in the series. At the end of the night, Hanayama managed to defeat Spec. However, the criminal left him so badly injured that he had to be transported to a hospital. The next day, Baki was at school when he suddenly received a visit from Hector Doyle. The criminal wanted to fight Baki right there, however. Baki fled out the window and avoided fighting at that moment. Not because he was afraid, but because he didn't want to involve his classmates in the conflict. But to his surprise, Yanagi, another of the inmates, was also looking for him. The criminal challenged Baki to a fight. In the middle of Baki and Yanagi's fight, Shibukawa appeared to help the boy, although he didn't really do much, as Baki ended up being defeated by Yanagi. At this point in the series, Guki had not yet overcome the trauma of his defeat against Yanagi. Later, Baki and the others gathered at Mitsunari's house. The old man scolded them for losing to the criminals. But what they didn't expect was that Dorian was going to burst into the meeting. It was actually a very bad idea on Dorian's part, as everyone present beat him up, so he had no choice but to escape to save his life. When they all returned home, Baki was surprised to discover that Surkoski had broken into his girlfriend's house. The two have a brief fight, but the Russian manages to trick Baki and kidnaps his girlfriend. This really pisses Baki off, so he starts looking for him everywhere. What he didn't expect is that his own father had planned this. Yuujirou was the one who gave Sikorsky this idea. He told him that the best way to motivate Baki was to take away something he loved. Yuujirou and Sikorsky were about to have a fight in that place. However, at that very moment, Oliva Biscuit appears. The strongest man in the United States had arrived in Tokyo. Oliva had been hired by the government to catch the 5 prisoners. That's why he appeared at that moment. His intention was to catch Sikorsky and return him to prison. Baki also arrives on the scene and without hesitation starts throwing punches. He throws Sikorsky out of the building and also tries to hit Oliva Biscuit, but realizes that this guy is too tough and heavy. Baki doesn't stop and keeps looking for Surkoski until he finally finds him in an abandoned building. In that place, Sikorsky was taking a bath but is interrupted by Baki. The boy doesn't even allow Surkoski to put on his underpants and they start fighting right there. Baki was very angry, so this time he doesn't play around and beats up Sikorsky. The Russian didn't even get a chance to defend himself. Oliva Biscuit also arrives on the scene and takes Sikorsky back to jail. Baki was so amazed by Oliva Biscuit's power that now one of his goals was to fight this man. After this, another couple of fights occur. Baki and Kozue continued to strengthen their relationship during the following chapters. The first time they slept together, something strange happened. That night, Yuujirou Hanma showed up to give Baki a motivational talk. He basically told him that if he wanted to get stronger, he was going to have to sleep with his girl day and night, no matter what. Baki, like an obedient son, heeded his father and spent several days locked up with his girlfriend. To test his new strength, Baki received a visit from Yanagi, who came looking for a fight. What Yanagi did not expect was that Baki had become too strong. He was no longer a boy, he was now a man. Baki attacked Yanagi with the whip strike. But things got more interesting when Sikorsky showed up to take revenge for what Baki had done to him a few days ago. However, Baki was now much stronger than before and easily defeated these guys at the same time. Baki doesn't want to keep fighting and leaves with his girlfriend to do other more important things. In his fight against the inmates, Baki had been poisoned by Yanagi. However, he didn't think much of it and didn't even go to the hospital. Obviously, it was a bad idea as the poison was slowly consuming his body. While this was going on, Dorian had been defeated by Doppo, and then Retsu gave him a blow so hard that it even made him lose his memory. Doyle was also defeated by Katsumi, but unlike the other inmates, Doyle accepted defeat like a real man. Unfortunately, Yanagi did not like this and attacked him just as he was about to leave Japan. Doyle lost his sight and was now easy prey. Later, Oliva Biscuit found him and took him by force to jail. Sikorsky, who had already been defeated several times, was defeated again, but this time he lost to Yuujirou Hanma. Later, he also faced the master of environmental combat, Gaia, and as expected, Sikorsky lost again, but this time he begged for his life and accepted his defeat. Yanagi is defeated by Motobi, who cuts his hand and leaves him badly wounded. But the one who really knocks him out is Yuujirou Hanma. The ogre wanted to hear him say that he accepted defeat, however this did not happen, and then Yuujirou knocked the criminal out with a single blow. All 5 inmates had been defeated and returned to prison, with the exception of Dorian. Baki, on the other hand, was still suffering from the effects of the poison, and it seemed that his Hanma blood would not be able to save him this time. A couple of chapters later, we meet a new character that will have relevance later on. I'm talking about the son of the legendary boxer Muhammad Ali. Ali Jr., like his father, is an elite boxer, some say even superior to his father. He quickly became one of the most hated characters in the series, because when Baki was in the hospital, this guy was flirting with his girlfriend. Let's not forget that time he humiliated Yuujirou without even touching him. Many hated him for being so self-centered. It was clear that this guy was coming for Baki. Baki kept getting worse, and the poison did not seem to disappear from his body. Retsu, as the good friend he is, takes Baki to China to try to cure him with ancestral medicines. The inmate arc ends, and now a new arc begins. Now Baki and his friends will participate in an important martial arts tournament held every 100 years. The winner of this tournament will be recognized as Kaio Emperor, a title that is only awarded to the strongest fighters. Kaku Kaio, a man over 140 years old, will participate in this tournament. This guy is considered the strongest and most respected man in China. He is also nicknamed the Emperor of the Sea. Ali Jr. also decides to participate in this tournament, so after passing some tests, he is accepted and will be part of Baki's team. What no one expected was that the ogre, Yuujirou Hanma, would also participate in the tournament. Thus, the team of foreigners will try to defeat the Chinese fighters. As Retsu was of Chinese origin, he will have to fight against Baki's team. In the first round of the tournament, there are no good fights, although in reality it was quite obvious that the Japanese fighters were going to humiliate the rest of the participants. However, there were some interesting and funny moments, for example, when Oliva crushed that poor guy and made him look like a crab. Also in the first round, Yuujirou humiliated Retsu's master. We could say that this guy's face fell off in shame. Also in this round, Baki fought against another fighter who was an expert in the use of poison. Although at first we thought that Baki was going to be defeated, in the end he managed to eliminate the poison in his body, thanks to the support of his girlfriend and his Hanma blood. Yuujirou watched Baki's fights like a father watching his son play in the park. In the second round, the Japanese team crushed the Chinese team. In fact, none of the local fighters stood a chance against Baki and his friends. Emperor Kaku was so upset with this situation that he changed the rules, and it was now going to be a 5-on-5 tournament, with the winning team being the one with the most victories. As expected, Baki and the others won their respective fights. The only one who won for the opposing team was Retsu. But Yuujirou, as usual, wanted to be the center of attention and exclaimed that his fight against Kaku was the most important and that this fight would decide the winning team regardless of the previous fights. The fight was very entertaining. After a long time, someone gave Yuujirou a tough fight, even making him fall on his back for the first time in a long time. But in the end, Yuujirou emerged victorious, and thus Baki's team affirmed their total victory over the Chinese team. After this, Baki and the others returned to Japan. After returning to Japan, Ali Jr. continues with his plan to steal Baki's girlfriend. He knows that he will have to defeat Baki first, so before challenging him to a match, he decides to fight his friends first. Junior easily defeats Shibukawa-sensei and Doppo Orochi. Everything seems to be going according to his plan. However, everything gets complicated when he faces Baki's older brother. Jack beats up Ali Jr. and leaves him so bad that he even has to go to the hospital. After this, Guki and Doppo take advantage of the situation and ask the young boxer for a rematch. As expected, Ali Jr. loses to both of them. But despite the beatings he had received, Ali Jr. continued with his plan to steal Baki's girlfriend. Finally, Yuujirou and Ali confirmed the fight between their sons. The day of the fight arrived, and everyone was looking forward to it. Unfortunately for Ali Jr., it was one of the most disappointing fights of the series. Baki only needed one punch to knock him out, and if it hadn't been for his father, Junior would surely have died that day. After that shocking victory, Baki officially challenges his father Yuujirou to a fight. The ogre accepts the challenge and says he will wait for the details of the fight. Baki begins new training to defeat his father. Baki's training consisted of facing imaginary enemies. Yes, I know how strange that sounds, but that's the way it is. Baki faced a copy of his father and a copy of Iron Michael, the former world boxing champion. In addition, using the power of imagination, he also managed to create a giant praying mantis and started fighting it. Stridum told Yuujirou about Baki's peculiar training. The ogre burst out laughing. To him, this was nothing more than child's play. Baki knows that this training will not be enough, so he decides to go for a real challenge. His goal was to enter the Arizona State Prison, but to do so, he had to commit a crime and be convicted by the courts. Baki doesn't think twice and kidnaps the President of the United States. He asks the President to send him to Arizona State Prison so he can confront Oliva Biscuit, also known as Mr. Unchained. The President accepts and Baki gets what he wanted. He is sent to the same prison where Oliva Biscuit was. When Baki arrived at the prison, he was surprised to see that Oliva had many luxuries and wasn't even in a cell like the other prisoners. Mr. Unchained had everything he wanted at his disposal. In this prison, he was number one. In that place, things would not be so easy for Baki because there were many people who also wanted to fight with Oliva Biscuit. One of them was Jun Gavaru. Gavaru was known as Mr. Second because of his speed. This guy was next on the list to face Oliva, so Baki will have to wait until these two have their fight. Baki takes advantage of his stay in prison to train with the jobs assigned to him by the guards. Here he also meets Iron Michael. Oliva Biscuit is a very interesting man. He even has the luxury of having his wife in the same prison as him. His girl's name is Maria, and although she always seems to treat him badly, it's her way of showing her love. The day of the fight arrives, and although Gavaru made Oliva bleed, in the end, Mr. Unchained took the victory. It was a very curious and different fight than usual, but Oliva Biscuit took the opportunity to show his true strength and stomped Gavaru. This made Baki excited. He couldn't wait any longer to face him. During the following days, Baki provoked Oliva Biscuit in every possible way. He wanted Mr. Unchained to fight him, and he knew that the only way to achieve this was to hurt his pride. Baki put on a show in which he imitated Biscuit. He showed that he could also do whatever he wanted in that prison. The boy dared to call him an old man, taunting him until his anger boiled. But Biscuit wasn't going to play his game. He refused to fight in such a place. Oliva tried to forget the humiliation, seeking solace in Maria's arms. But his pride wouldn't let him rest. He demanded a fight with Baki, and the warden agreed. The plan was to broadcast it worldwide, so Oliva could humiliate the boy before the watching world. But when Oliva visited Baki in his cell, the boy provoked him again. He said that this need to fight in front of an audience was pathetic. A true fighter would fight anytime, anywhere, regardless of the crowd. Baki kicked Oliva in the face and challenged him to fight then and there. Mr. Unchained finally accepted the boy's challenge and removed his suit to prepare for battle. From the start of the fight, Oliva treated Baki like a toy. The boy was clearly at a disadvantage in terms of physical strength. Oliva threw a punch that sent Baki flying through several concrete walls and into the prison yard. The guards watched helplessly. Baki tried to hit Biscuit, but his blows did nothing to the hulking mass of muscle. Oliva slammed Baki to the ground, nearly knocking him unconscious. But just when it seemed all was lost, Baki activated his demon back. With a single punch, he knocked Oliva Biscuit out cold. Mr. Unchained was stunned by the boy's sudden surge in power. But it wouldn't be enough to defeat him. Oliva used his Pac-Man technique, devouring Baki whole. But Oliva's biggest mistake was using the technique twice. Baki found a way to break free, and the two fighters began exchanging blows. It was a brute force fight, no techniques, just strength. But in the end, Baki achieved the impossible. He defeated Oliva Biscuit using only his physical strength. Mr. Unchained recognized Baki's strength and accepted defeat. After the incredible fight, Oliva ordered the warden to release Baki Hanma from prison. The boy was escorted to the airport, feeling ready to finally confront his father. Elsewhere, Yuujirou waited impatiently for Baki's arrival. This was going to be the best fight of all time. At first, Baki doesn't want to face Pickle. Only after realizing he's possibly stronger than Yuujirou, he decides to do it. During the fight, Baki uses the whip strike to hurt Pickle. He also uses his mental imaging to become a dinosaur hybrid in Pickle's eyes, terrifying him and finally ending with his intent to use technique in order to win. The outcome of the match between Baki and Pickle could be considered to have gone either way. Pickle is the one who was left standing after the fight with Baki, but inadvertently used a weapon in the form of a martial arts technique to beat him. As stated by the onlookers, a weapon is a tool used by the weak against the strong, which would make Baki the true winner of the fight for having cornered Pickle. Also, Baki is the first person to make Pickle feel fear and cower in a corner. This is most evident between the conclusion of Jack's fight and Baki's fight. Whereas Pickle saw Jack as prey, he saw Baki as a friend equal for the first time. When Baki asks why Yuujirou killed Emi, they are starting to have their final fight. Baki awakens the demon face not on his back, but on his brain. Although he is able to strike Yuujirou several times, and also manages to surprise him with a powerful technique once, Cockroach Dash, the fight still appears to be heavily in his father's favor, which Yuujirou pauses many times to give Baki time to recover and to offer him fighting advice. Towards the end of their fight, Yuujirou is in good shape while Baki is severely injured and beaten, falling unconscious. He manages to land hits while down with his fighting spirit. Yuujirou recognizes him as his son and the only person who could give him a real fight. Thereafter, he makes miso soup from shadow cooking. Baki mentions it is salty, and before Yuujirou lies, that it isn't. Because he had to lie and couldn't make his lie into truth due to Baki spilling the soup for his father to save face, he declares Baki as the strongest on Earth. Baki himself gives Yuujirou the victory because Yuujirou was able to withstand his attacks and could have beaten him confidently, evidenced by the fact that Baki was only barely holding himself together, while Yuujirou had sustained minimal injuries, and the match ends with Yuujirou essentially sharing the title of World's Strongest, as because although he had won the physical brawl, it didn't sit right with him to declare himself on another level above Baki anymore, as he had needed to try more than he ever had to in the past. That was a brief recap of the entire Baki series, from start to end. As you can see, Baki is a story about strength, perseverance, and the human spirit. It is also a story about the importance of family, friends, and rivalry. Baki is a complex and well-developed character. He is not perfect, but he is always striving to be better. He is also a very relatable character. Everyone has faced challenges in their lives, and Baki's story shows us that it is possible to overcome those challenges. Baki is a truly inspiring story, and it is one that I highly recommend to everyone. As you can see, I didn't cover everything at the end because this video was about only for Baki, but if you want any other characters, I'll be happy to make video on that character too. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content. I also appreciate any comments you may have. Thank you for watching.